This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Gunners Ross podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek, and our promo code is TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling. Put that in the promo code for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back to Gunners and Ross podcast, where we are positively Arsenal. And that we are. It's very weird when I'm on my own and I say that we are straight after I say something else. But here we are. Straight away, I'm just going to say, because it backs up what I just said, Jason on TikTok says you look lonely there without Joe. I know it's just 2 weeks. Joe was in Florida. He was in Orlando. The hurricane is hitting, so he got an earlier flight. He is home, but he is sleeping because he's been awake for about 36 hours. So it's just me again. It's not the worst episode for him to miss because I would say routine win with Southampton. Probably not, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it's also international breaks. There's a lot less to talk about. A little bit about the City hearing that happened this week. But we'll get to all of these things in a small short minute, or in a jiffy. I think jiffy. Do we still say jiffy? But no, this is the podcast. This is Gunners Ross podcast. We're on iTunes and Spotify. You can also watch us on TikTok Live every single Wednesday at 10 a.m. GMT on Gunners Ross Pod, which is where we are right now live, hence where Jason is communicating with me. So if you want to communicate with the pod during the episodes, this is when we do it. The podcast will be out later today on a Wednesday. Other than that, we have another podcast called The Peppercorn Boys. Listen to that on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And the reason I bring that up is because of this. Bruno, who the host is of the other podcast, can't stand it when we open drinks on air, but I like it. And the reason I like it is it's not similar, but Steve Austin used to do it on the Broken Skull. Was that what it's called? I can't remember what the Stone Cold podcast was called, but he used to basically have some kind of Red Bull, or he would have like a coffee, and he'd say sip of coffee for the working man, and it made me feel comfortable, so I like to do it. Jason's also a discount code SeatGeek. Exactly, TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. As you can see behind me on the TikTok, it is on the board. You'll see that also on the Positive Wrestling podcast with Simon Miller and on the Peppercorn Boys. But you'll also hear it at the start of this podcast. Every single week we are brought to you by SeatGeek. Anyway, let's get into it. Do you know what I'm going to first off doing? Is Prediction League. We are, I think, is it 7 games into the season? And already second international break, which is mad. Last week, let's just quickly run down what everyone did. Palace, Liverpool, Joe and Simon. Arsenal Saints, all of us. Brentford, Wolves, Simon and Scott got that one. Leicester v Bournemouth. I don't even remember the result on that one. City, Fulham, we all went for City. West Ham, Ipswich. Simon, only I went for West Ham. Everton, Newcastle, which was a draw. Simon and Scott. Villa we all went Villa, and it was a horrible draw. Chelsea Forest, we were at Chelsea, it was a draw. And then Brighton Spurs. Simon went for Spurs. I went for Brighton. It looks like I've done well there. I need to tally that up correctly because I'm about 6 points behind Simon at the top of the league. And next week, when we get back to doing Prediction League, because next week we'll be predicting the weekend that's ahead of us, which will be Arsenal away at Bournemouth and the rest of the Premier League games. I'll give you the exact tally we're all at going into the next little stint before yet another international break. I can't believe we are 7 games in, we're at our second international. By 10 games in, we're going to be at a third international. Then there's going to be 20 games before we get another one. I don't know why. No one wants these. It's the Nations League. It's just such a waste of time. And they wonder why players are getting injured and they're complaining about it. It's not the Premier League. It's this. No one's added games to the Premier League. They've added 2 games to the Champions League, but they removed 2 games from the Champions League if you're in the top 8. So there's no added games, really. They're talking about these. And I don't know why we're doing it. Thank you, Jason, in the chat. Said Leicester won 1-0 against Bournemouth. That is a great result for Leicester, isn't it? I didn't even think about that. No one went for that, just out of interest. But no, saying that, it looks like I've had a decent week. Just a little glance through that. I feel quite good. But we should talk about the week that was in the Premier League. And I think the standout situations, probably Ten Hag, I think the Eagles circled a little bit there at Villa Park, because all of the backroom staff, all of the directors of football, the owners, anyone connected to Man United, Alex Ferguson, they were all there to kind of watch a public, I don't want to say the word execution, but I mean of the manager, the sacking. And it hasn't gone to plan. He drew a Porto and he drew a Villa. We kind of thought they'd lose both or lose one. It's hard to sack a manager when they don't just lose. And I think after the Spurs game, I think if he got sacked, I think people would have understood because how bad it was. But then to go away at Porto, which is actually a tough place to go, albeit they went 2-0 up and threw that way and, salvaged a point in the end somehow. And then Villa Park is tough, but again, they're on a short week coming off of Bayern Munich. So I think when you sack a manager, it has to have a natural pattern that makes it feel correct that you've sacked them. And I don't think he gave them that. And he's hanging on by such a string. And I know there was big meetings yesterday. They haven't outwardly come out and sacked him since then. But there is talk, I think Goldbridge even was talking about it, saying that Ten Hag's basically on holiday. They gave him time to go away with his family. And that was scheduled for the international break. And they're not going to sack him while he's on holiday. So if they are sacking him, he now knows he's waiting to get sacked when he comes back from holiday, which I'm sure makes you enjoy a holiday more. And then, or they're not, and they should probably let him know while he's on holiday, you're safe, blah, blah, blah. So it's a very messy situation. I don't think he can turn it around. And it is the oddest, I don't know what the word is. It's the oddest manager of a major club I've seen in a while. This is his third year. He's brought him 2 trophies in 2 years, essentially, until this third year. He's been awful in the league to an extent, but he's also won a lot of games. He's broken every negative record there is at Man United. And I think the big one that comes back to it, I think Ange is the perfect example of, you can lose and you can drop down the table and you can, promote youth if you have a certain style that you see implemented. Ange's stuff was implemented within 3-4 games. We've seen other managers over at Palace. We've seen Gary O'Neill at Wolves, that their style is implemented within minutes. And it doesn't matter what players they have, whether they're world-class, whether they're average, whether you spend a lot of money, whether they're youth. You can teach football players at that level to do the style you want. And then over time, you bring in players that specialise in those positions you need and the way in which you play. Arteta is another example, but Arteta didn't implement the style we see today in year 1. In year 1 and 2, he implemented a way different style to what he did in 3 and 4. And then now in 5, it's another step to a grittier, nastier kind of version of what 3 and 4 were. Where 3 and 4 was just pure vibes. It was just great football, fun football. And it wasn't enough to get it over the line because maybe it was maybe a little, not soft, because I think he's always brought an element of steel to that team, but maybe not gritty enough in a certain sense, whereas this team this year are definitely there. Because I think this time last year we were kind of complaining around this international break about it doesn't look free-flowing. We're not sure it's enough to go the distance. We had lost a couple games, or we'd lost a game, and we had drawn a couple, and we had just kind of edged our way through games. And it's not too dissimilar to how he's kind of gotten playing this year, but this year there's an authority about it. That you hope eventually there's going to be a run like there was at the start of 2024, where I think we scored, remember we scored 6-7 goals in every game for 8 games running or something. We've only lost 1 away game or something, or 1 game this year. I can't remember what it was. But there's some crazy stats but again, he kind of implemented those styles over time. And you can kind of have issue with someone like Ange. I think I have issue with Ange because he's a Spurs manager, but also because when he went down to 9 men, he didn't adapt. He carried on. And can you imagine Wenger, for example, doing that? Having been unbeaten, done all these things. If he'd gone to 9 men and done that, they would have ripped him apart and said, that is so naive. It's so stupid. You should go to a low block. Blah blah blah. Instead, he got praised for losing like 4-1 with 9 men and carrying on playing. And I mean, the style in which he plays, I don't think is even good. It's such a high line. The game was in like a 10-yard area, but they were like, "Oh no, good for him. He stuck to it." And then, like I said, well, for example, Arsenal went to City and did a low block, and people did not like that. So it's weird what they decide to have issue with and what they don't. But at least Ange has that style, and I think with Ten Hag is I have no clue. And I know I suppose like Bruno, I need to get back on the podcast because he usually does our Man United pods kind of every 6 months to kind of let us know from a Man United perspective where we're at. But I haven't seen a style. He said he spent over 500 million on players. Like the other day, I don't know what he was up to against Villa. He dropped every player he'd bought and kind of played the original team he inherited. And I don't know if that was kind of he could see them circling and went, go on then, here you go. This is your lot. But then it kind of went okay, if that makes sense. So because it went okay, I think at half time he kind of tried to bring his players on because he was like, oh, I now need to prove like when I bring my players on, we then win the game. And that also didn't go well. So I don't know what he was trying to do with that. But I mean, Johnny Evans being the man of the match is not good. Like Berbatov said, it's kind of embarrassing that that's the case. But generally with them, I don't know, as a fan of someone who isn't Man United, I think we all want to see Ten Hag stay not because he is a bad manager. I think he's a decent manager. I think he just hasn't got that dressing room. He hasn't got the magnitude of what Man United are. It's similar to Emery. Emery's a very good coach. We can see that. We had some really bad times with Emery. The revisionist history seems to ignore with how good he is now with Villa. But I mean, he's not challenging for a league and stuff like that. Arteta has done a lot better than what Emery did, no matter what anyone says. But he was always a good coach. I knew at the time he was a good coach. But he couldn't deal with the magnitude of the club, the size of the club, who the manager was, the expectation of the crowd, the type of players he had. He brought in a lot of players. He didn't have control of the players. He wanted Zaha. He got Pepe. He wanted a left-sided player. He got a right-sided player. Those kind of things are stuff that leads to, in the NFL, they talk about schemes. Joe Flacco right now is 39 years old, I think, and he's at the Colts. He was really good at the Browns last year, but I mean, he was known for being the Baltimore quarterback, and he is elite, but he's kind of gone around as backups everywhere, and every time he plays, you just go, he's not Joe Flacco anymore. Whereas here, he does seem like it, and it's, again, the perfect mix of the right team at the right time, the right schemes, the right plays. All that plays into the managers in the Premier League. And I think with Arteta is he had a little bit of something going for him being an ex-captain. So he came in, they had a respect for him because he was an ex-captain, so they gave him a bit more. He won them an FA Cup immediately, which bought him a load of time, and he did that with a team he did not like in a style he didn't want to do. But it bought him time because he went, I've brought you an FA Cup. They then gave him backing so he could buy a few players. He couldn't get rid of all the players because obviously it's not FIFA where we just eliminate 30 players we don't want and buy a load. And then over the next couple of years, he slowly tried to get to the team he wanted, and he gained more control. For example, him and Edu are in control of all the transfers and all these things, which Emery didn't. But Emery never got the faith that they would allow him to do that. And then by the time Arteta is now in full control, it was that third year, and I think people were looking. I think at that point they were close to sacking him because we hadn't won another trophy. We hadn't broken into top four. We failed on that last week. And then the following year, we challenged for the title. And I think everyone, whoa, what's this? Because no one expected it. And it was really good football. And then once that finished, I think that brought him more time, like a trophy, where they thought, well, maybe he is the right man. And then he bought a couple more players, sold a couple of players. He got Rice, he got Havertz, and we went, I'm not sure what any of this is. Then he took it another level and challenged to the last day. And again, I think that point, they've got it. It's not a fluke that 1 year. The FA Cup wasn't a fluke. He's a good manager. It's needed time. He's finally at the squad he likes. I think he's genuinely about one or two players away from having the dream squad he wants, which I think will happen in either January or the summer. And he's earned that over time. And I think with Ten Hag is every time he won a trophy, he stuff happened that didn't back it up. So every time he wins it, like Emery, for example, he went to Europa Cup final. If he'd won that Europa Cup final, I think he would have been given the whole following year, and I would have Arteta wouldn't have ended up at Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? So there's a knock on effect, and big moments will do that. And I think a lot of people didn't in the Man United world didn't like the fact that basically if he beat City at the FA Cup, he would keep his job. If he lost, he'd lose his job. That's not the game to test him on, because City could have gone down to 8 men and kicked the ball in their own net, and you go, oh, okay, keep him. Or he could have outplayed them, and then at the end of it, lost, and then they sacked him. So it doesn't really make any sense. Just looking at TikTok, we got Sophie in there. Hello, Sophie. We got Football Daily saying boycott the City fixture. We will talk about that. Jason says fair play to Emery. He's doing a number at Villa. I've got some gifts from Lissy Does. Some badges. Good morning from Scuba Diver. But yeah, so as far as Man United, I don't know. I think Thomas Tuchel is a conversation for them. Does he improve them? This is the issue. Is all of these guys? Ten Hag's a good manager. Thomas Tuchel's a good manager. It's like I was saying about Arsenal. It's the expectation of the crowd, what they want. They shout attack if you keep the ball too long and don't go forward with it. Thomas Tuchel keeps the ball a lot, and he is very defensive. He could get them a lot of results, but the fans will never be truly happy, I don't think. Similar to what happened at Chelsea. He got to Champions League final. He won the Champions League, and they still weren't fully happy. Again, that's Chelsea and they're crazy, but it still kind of warrants the same at Man United. There's managers that I think, the Ipswich manager, obviously, who they wanted. Again, that is a really good choice, but when you've spent 500 or 600 million on players that Ten Hag wants, and half of them are from Ajax and his players, they're going to be questioning sacking him, because you're left with a squad full of Ten Hag's players, and you bring in McKenna and he goes, yeah, I don't really like any of these. I need more youth. I need these. Like McTominay, he would have probably done a lot with. Certain players they've moved on, and you just go, and then you're back in that situation. You have to lose money, and as an owner, it doesn't make business sense at all. So it's almost like you have to stick with the devil you know than the devil you don't know. So I really don't know what they're going to do. It's fun to watch because I've grown up watching Man United win everything, but it's hard. Like I said, I'm going to get Bruno on the podcast again to kind of talk through all things Man United, because it is so interesting, because I don't follow a lot of Man United, but I do listen to Goldbridge, but not the Man United one, just the football one. That's football, is it? I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. So I keep up a little bit, but it's just fascinating because we were in a very similar situation, but theirs has gone on since 2013. Whereas at least ours has been rectified since 2017 when Wenger left. So I don't know, but it's very interesting to watch. Their fixture list doesn't look great either. Still, like when you're looking at it, you're thinking, I don't know where they're going to get points, and it could be inevitable. And they don't want to keep him and then sack him after the next one. They've got a 2-week gap now to appoint a new manager and talk to them and set in a plan, or like Arteta had a 5-year plan. You'd assume they should bring in, Thomas Frank on a 5-year plan or something like that. They should bring in Thomas Frank and Mbeumo, and they should sell as many of their players as they can. Jason says no matter how good the vet is, they can't bring back a dead cat. That is the Man United. That's what I did the same with Emery. He was a good coach the whole time. He lost that Europa Cup final. The minute he lost that, the crowd just gave up, and they didn't turn up to the matches. And it doesn't matter what he does. He could play really well for 20 games running like he did. Didn't play well. He won 20. He didn't lose in 24 games. But he could have played 10 games in a row, won 6-0, and people were just like, nah, don't. And I think that's what Ten Hag is. I think if he gets some Champions League football, they'll go, okay. If he gets some the FA Cup and Champions League football, he's done it before. They'll go, all right. So the only thing he could do is randomly win the league this year, and I still think they would sack him. So I think sometimes things have just gone too far. But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the whole Ten Hag experience because they do like to just ship 4 goals randomly, and that is a bit of fun. The other stuff that's been happening this year in Manchester, obviously, is the Man City hearing. I must admit, I've read a breakdown of this court hearing that is in layman terms. This is nothing to do with the 115, 130 charges, or whatever it is now. This is a separate thing. This is to do with the, There's a way of wording this which just makes it sound like it's a farce from the get go, but the embellishing of your books based on companies that you may or may not own, essentially. So, for example, Man City, when you look at their ground at the Etihad, there is boards that, the sponsor boards that go around the pitch. They got double sized ones on the TV, haven't they? The ones behind the other ones. A lot of those companies, if you search them, aren't companies. They've been again, allegedly, they've been, apparently not, but they've been made up by their owners just to have a place to go. I'm gonna plow in. For example, if I've got £1 trillion in my bank, and I'm the Arsenal owner, and I go, oh, Bet365 or Budweiser or God, I don't even know what's on the advertising, Prime. Do you know what? I'm going to just quickly go on the Limited website. I'm going to make up a betting site, and it's going to be called Gunners R Us. And as that company, I'm going to ask Man City I'm going to ask if I can sponsor them as the advertising hoarding. But I think I want to give them $5 billion a year for that benefit, which is a very overmarketed thing. And City go, yes, we'll have that. Because the guy's talking on the phone to himself. He goes, I'm going to give you $5 billion a year. He goes, all right, that's brilliant. We'll go with that. Okay, good doing business. And then their books show massive profits, which means that their PFF and PFA and PDFs and God knows whatever they want to call them now. Basically, all those things are super high, so they can spend more money. It's the issue that Newcastle had, because Newcastle, if you watch their documentary, did a very similar thing. It wasn't a made up one, but it was a pre-owned airline, I believe, by their owners. They tried to sponsor the shirt, and the Premier League banned it and said no. Whereas City have been making up betting companies and all sorts of unknown companies that, if you search, don't exist for years. And that's what Newcastle's issue's been, is that they're 100 times richer than City. And they cannot use any of it. And the reason City can use all this is because of these things. Again, some of the charges are to do with this. So the chances of them being punished for 130 charges is unlikely now. But the knock-on effect of this is essentially the Super League, because Chelsea recently sold a load of hotels to themselves to create profit. We look at, as Arsenal fans, we know we couldn't have spent more than about 40 million net on players this year, so we had to sell to buy. That's kind of normal. That's what most clubs are doing. But I think now that they've accepted what Man City have done, Newcastle will be stupid if next week their hoardings aren't 10 different companies they've just made up. They're paying them 10 billion a year, well over market profit, and then in the summer they can go and spend way more money than anyone else in the world and bring all those players in. So it's opened up something that basically any state-owned clubs are going to probably flourish now more than they have already. And the clubs that aren't owned by states are probably going to there's going to be a massive gap. So there's going to essentially be the top 4 teams in the league are probably going to be Newcastle, City. This is going in the next few years. Newcastle, City, I don't know who else is owned by them. Forest, Everton. Who are the ones that there's a load of them backed them, didn't they? I can't remember who it was. Chelsea. Those are going to be the top 4. And then there's going to be a massive area of all the rest of us. And then the bottom 3 will be the teams that come up from the Championship that don't have enough money to compete, and they go down every year and they just switch every year. So it's becoming very segregated. It's not good. It's not good, but there is a knock-on effect that this could harm City, because they think this might influence the 115 charges. So they've won the war, but they've won the battle. They might not have won the war here. But again, the charges are still to come. They are for a lot of different things that other teams have already been punished for. So it's still coming. It's just I think it's a bit demoralising, the fact that they've won that, if you can say they've won it, because the knock-on is going to be awful, really. Football Daily says if City don't get charged, I believe a lot of our fan supporters will walk away from the game. Yeah, I think at this point, because Super Premier League in England and coming in, yeah, it's becoming the Super League, because, like I said, it's unlimited resources when we're talking hundreds of billions. That you can do what you want really because you can just move the money around. When you're owned by just, let's say, a 1 millionaire, it's still massive compared to other teams. But then there's teams, it's teams like Wrexham who were competing. If teams start to get bought out by state-owned places, they are going to stop competing because there's nowhere you can't. Hollywood actors with millions can't compete with state-owned companies that are creating betting companies that don't exist and buying hotels off themselves and all sorts like that. So it's quite demoralizing, and you almost want those. That maybe there should be a Super League, and it should just be the state-owned clubs, and just leave us all to crack on. Get rid of City, get rid of Chelsea, get rid of Newcastle and Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United. We can all kind of compete, and hopefully a good team like, I don't know, Brentford can compete for the league as well. Would be nice. Um, Jason said, "Sorry, I meant Scottish Premier League, not the Super." I understand. Yeah, it does because Newcastle and City will be head and shoulders. And what's weird is if the 115 charges, anything happens and City do get relegated or they do end up elsewhere for a period of time, and Newcastle now have this newfound excitement of getting to spend more money, it could just be a one-horse race. Like it could be Newcastle doing what City have been doing, but with even less competition. Because Newcastle will buy Saka and they'll go and buy an older Salah and they'll buy everyone's best players. Or Haaland will go from City to there when they get relegated. It'll be very unnerving. Let's just say that. Another interesting one is the Man City director of football, after this court case, said he's leaving at the end of the season. And nothing screams dodgy more than the head of football leaving after they win a court case. Because I think they would have learned a lot more about the 115 charges in the case. I know it's not connected, but they would have probably got a better standing of where they're at as far as if they're going to be punished. And I feel like they're going to get punished because Pep's on his way at the end. The director of football's going. I'd say that castle is crumbling a little bit, and I don't see how they don't get punished for something, even if it's a 25-point deduction. I think the bare minimum they'll get is about a 25-point deduction to start next year or at the end of this year, because the punishment's supposed to be out before the end of the season. I don't know, but that's the bare minimum. I don't like, obviously the bare minimum would be 4-point deduction, but they've got at least 50 charges, the same as what Everton and those guys did. So I don't know how they get out of all of them, because some of them are for like being late to meetings. Some of these charges, they're being late to hearings, and I mean you can't really not be. If you were late to a hearing, you're late to a hearing. So therefore, if they deem that as a punishment, they have to be punished. Victoria Cordia Crescent says Saka is one of them old school Arsenal boys. He ain't leaving for a while. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a money thing. I think certain people have proved that. I know Mbappe, you'd say hasn't because he went to PSG, but natural progression for a French guy is probably to go to Paris, and then he wanted to go to Real Madrid. And again, he's making a lot of money, but he turned down Saudi, unlike Oisman or Tony or these people that were more in the middle of their career. And I don't think Saka's the type that's going to be like, I'd rather go to Madrid because it's double the money. I think he's an Arsenal kid. He's staying. But again, eventually people do want something different. In the next year or so, guess what? Arteta probably will leave. Arsenal will have a reshape, and they'll have to promote more youth and players we won't be doing as well. And if world-class players like Saka, they'll either hold through all of that, get to 30 and then be like, I'm just going to see out here. Or at that point when he's 27 and it all starts to dip, he goes, I need to go win stuff. And he goes to Madrid or Newcastle. 1875 says good morning and says, just like Trent, he's gone to Madrid. I think Trent one I definitely can see. But again, it's very similar to what I'm saying about Saka is he saw through the Klopp thing. He's out the other end and he's, they might win the league this year, for example. But either way, there's going to be a rebuild once Salah leaves and all these things. And he, at 26, 27, do you want to be a part of another rebuild that's going to take 2-3 years that you've gone through already? Or do you want to go directly to a Real Madrid or a Munich or somewhere and just go, I'm just going to play for a team that doesn't have dips. They just, every year they compete and I might win the league. TDF Clan just says, Ten Hag out. I will say this: we just did about 20 minutes on Ten Hag. So if you do want to hear that, go to Gunners R Us podcast on iTunes and Spotify and listen to that, because we've done a decent amount on that. Some other stuff that happened this weekend before we get to Arsenal, because I'm going to hardly talk about internationals because we're just all hoping, that our players don't get injured or that they're injured already and not going, a la Havertz, and we'll talk about that. The other information was Liverpool won away at Palace. Liverpool have conceded 2 goals in 7. They've lost 1, won 6. It's a very good start. We talk about Arsenal's dark arts, but I mean, I don't know who sorted Liverpool's fixtures list out, because it's still good. It's going well, and they should be at the top of the league. I think they should probably have 7 from 7 realistically. They'd be disappointed with the lack of that one win, but they have looked good. I think Palace have been really poor. I don't think they have had that kind of. There was spells in that game where they showed exactly what you'd expect from Palace, but it was in such small spells that there's some kind of balance not right. But the question I have is more on the penalty that should have been given to Palace. And again, Palace didn't get a penalty against Everton a week before, so this is 2 weeks running for them that they're kind of being on the bad end of a bad decision. But Van Dijk has 2 hands on the wrist of Mark Guéhi and holds it. And it happened at West Ham the week before. Their wording was he held him for a fleeting moment. This wasn't a fleeting moment, but they described it as not enough it didn't change what was going to happen. But I mean, now we're talking really grey, because we don't know what he's going to do. We don't know if he was going to challenge the keeper. We don't know if he was going to look like he challenged the keeper was going to fumble into his own net. We don't know if it was going to ricochet off the keeper onto him if he was nearer. There's so many things like that. That kind of refereeing is awful. And then what happened later on was in the Everton game, there was a pull. And they gave it and they said it was stone wall. So now we were talking, there's 2 separate occasions the same real thing happens. And there's 2 different outcomes. And then the week before there was the fleeting comment. We don't know what is what now. Like, I don't think they've graded their own area. We've talked about the double yellow cards for kicking the ball away. By the way, they've given up on that, because all weekend people were nudging the ball away and everything. That is gone. That is gone. So, like we said at the start of the season, there'll be something every year that lasts 6-7 games that will ruin a few people's games. Like, I remember Sheffield United, they said any touching in the box will, blah, blah, blah. Sheffield United gave away like 7 penalties in 7 games, lost all 7, and then they just gave up on it, and they got relegated that year. This year, we were the ones that got punished, really, and the 2 games in which it happened, we dropped points from winning positions. So it's already had its effect. They'll now give up on it, and you won't see one more person get sent off for that all year. You'll see bookings for it, but back to where we started, which is, if you block a free kick from being taken or you kick the ball away in anger, that's a booking. We were all happy with that. And then they added this new rule of just touching the ball. That's gone. But the touching in the box, on the chat, 1875 says contact is contact, it's a penalty. Yeah, and again, later on in that game, there was Calvert-Lewin could have popped it into an empty net, and Dan Burn was slid in behind him, and he kicked Dan Burn because he was in the way. And they've said, oh, he's kicked him. But couldn't you do that for anytime someone goes to have a shot, just put your leg in like the proverbial spokes in the wheel and just let him kick you and then be like, didn't shoot. That's not the point. Like, when I play football, that was something I always did. Like, when someone goes to clear the ball, I wouldn't go in front of the ball to block the ball. I would go the other side of the ball so he'd kick my leg. And as long as you put enough pressure down and kind of put your bum into it kind of thing, he'd kick you quite hard, but you kind of get away with it. He'd fall over because he'd hurt him, and then you'd run off with the ball. And every single time it was a foul. And I'd be like, he kicked me, even though I knew what I was doing. But you can now do that for shots, I guess, because they're saying, oh no, he kicked him. It's like, he had no clue he was about to slide in, and he mistimed that tackle, and that's the only reason he was behind him, and he had to kick him. So I honestly don't fully get it. I think Liverpool have got away with one there. It probably did enough to win the game, but that's irrelevant. Decisions are decisions. The other game we need to talk about is the Brighton Spurs game, which might be one of my favourite games of all time. Bet responsibly, but I took £1 to £22 during this game because of how predictable the history of the Tottenham is, and I did enjoy that. 2-0 down, they never stop playing their football. Brighton win 3-2, Ange is almost comical afterwards. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but the clips. He's almost. It's the club is so much of a joke. It's almost funny because he's almost laughing like, we entertain you though. He kind of kept saying that, and it's like, what is happening? He hates Tottenham so much since them wanting to lose to City to stop us winning the league, and he didn't understand how not having Champions League for a year was better than Arsenal winning the league. And I don't think he's ever going to forgive it. And I think sometimes he laughs at his own club. And again, similar like Ten Hag, as an Arsenal fan, it's all very funny because it's mad the way they play. And once they went to 3-2 down, Brian were all over them for about another 5 minutes. And then there was about 20 minutes where Tottenham had the ball. They didn't really create anything. They just passed the ball side to side and just never did anything. And everyone's like, well, it's Ange ball, isn't it? It was very odd. If that was Arsenal and we never attacked, I would have been so confused. It was such a strange thing to see. It was just odd, but I loved it. It was brilliant. They're struggling. Them and Man United mid-table. Hopefully they stay there. Just nonsense. West Ham Super 11 won a game, but it wasn't. It was convincing in scoreline, but not a good game. Chelsea drew, which is interesting. Leicester, as Jason said earlier, massive 3 points. I really like Brentford. They keep scoring in the first minute, which is really strange. Did you see, Victoria Cordy Crescent said, did you see the comical moment? I think it was the German league, the goalkeeper defender. I did. Did you see how bad the Sunderland Leeds one was with Meslier? And then he very Spursy, Meslier, was laughing with the Sunderland manager afterwards, after he just conceded. 1875, the penalties in Germany, 2 handballs. Honestly, since VAR came in, I like VAR. I think VAR is good. It's just it needs to be used correctly. I think I've become more confused about any of the rules of football. But here we are. Going from there, I'm going to jump into the Arsenal game. We haven't spoken about this Galatasaray. I haven't spoken about Arsenal yet. Arsenal at home to Southampton. I think after the Leicester scare, again, a scare in the fact that we were 2-2 until 90 minutes. But when you watch the game, it was absolutely dominant. Probably the most dominant we've ever been. So we deserved a win, and it was always coming because that was ridiculous. And their goalie had a blinder. And then you thought, because of that, we had that scare. Maybe this week it would just be a routine 3-0 against Southampton. And in the end, in all fairness, it was 3-1. But the opposite of Leicester game, the scoreline is very deceiving. I don't think we deserved to win this game. I thought Saints were really good. I thought we were very slow. I think we did maybe too many changes to kind of change that style that we've been playing. And the minute we started to change it back, they started scoring. I just saw a 1-1. I think they nearly scored. And they should have scored. Then at 2-1, they could have made it 2-2 right at the end before we made it 3. I think a lot of it's very lucky. That is one we definitely got away with. And to drop points at home to Southampton is the ones that hurt more than losing away at Liverpool or home to Liverpool. Because these ones you almost guarantee, 80% of the league, you almost want this 3 points everywhere. The others, you'll win some, you'll lose some. And if you win more than you lose, then you might win the league. But these are the ones that hurt. Last year, 2-2 Fulham at home, losing to Villa 2-0 at home, losing to West Ham 2-0 at home. They're the ones you remember, not losing away at Villa or Liverpool, or losing away at Villa or Newcastle, which I hated those games, but they're games you kind of assume maybe you could lose, whereas those ones you need to win. And so it was very important we got the win, very happy with the win, but it wasn't right. And we started Sterling and Jesus. Sterling actually looked decent. Jesus looks really confused on where he fits in this new style. 1875 says Gabriel Jesus not celebrating the goal is a disgrace. He's finished Arsenal. Yeah, I saw that on the bench cam when you score that to go. Was it to go 2-1 up? Or was it 1-1? It might have been a 1-1. But or was it a week before? It was the winner, wasn't it? It was the Leicester to go 3-2 in 93rd minute or whatever. Yeah, very strange because you think this time last year we were against Bournemouth or the year before, and we scored that late winner. And I mean, every member of staff entered the field. We got in trouble, and again, they're learning from it. But whereas now we've got people that aren't actually celebrating. It's very strange. I don't know if he's discontent with the club. I think he knows he's not performing how he wants because he's getting opportunity. He played in this game, played in the Champions League, played in the Carabao Cup. He's getting he's getting minutes, and when he's on, he's not doing enough with it. So I think he'd be more disappointed with himself. But I really don't know where he fits. That vibey Arsenal for that couple of years, he was very much the centre of attention until he got injured. The new one, I think we all agree, Havertz is that guy that needs to play up front, and we don't want him to keep dropping in midfield, but Odegaard's out. But that's the type of forward, like we've talked about on the podcast before with Firmino at Liverpool. He was, for that really amazing Liverpool Klopp team, Firmino was the perfect centre forward. If you'd put in Haaland or someone like that, he would have scored goals, but he would have disrupted a lot of what Firmino did. He was so unselfish. He still got goals, but he got a load of assists. He got a load of spreading the ball out, and he's what made it work. And I think with Arsenal, you need a Havertz type forward or Havertz. I think Jesus maybe too greedy, maybe holds the ball that too long. I just think that we've found the style of forward we have to have, and it's more Havertz than it is Jesus. So he might be surplus to requirements, especially I think at the end of the season. I don't know if we keep Sterling. Trossard will stay. I think he's going to sign a new deal. Martinelli finally got Martinelli back into form, which is good. And then Saka still needs that understudy. I think Nelson will go. I think Sterling will probably go. And at that point, Jesus is the backup essentially to Saka. But I think he'll want a new proper backup to Saka in the shape of, Dibbling in this game was a really good. I think he's a player that you need to buy before Tottenham make him Spursy, basically. He looks really good, Dibbling. But someone like that, a right-sided midfielder, to go with Saka, and then Havertz is up front. But the backup to him is, at the minute, Trossard and Jesus and all this. I think if you keep Trossard out wide, even though, by the way, Trossard's much better down the middle than Jesus in this style, you keep Trossard out left, you keep Saka and the new guy out right, you have Havertz, and you sell Jesus, and your Sterling goes, and you put that money into, I think it'll probably be Sesko, to be honest. Shumik says hello. Do you think we'll send Sterling back after loan from Khalid? Yeah, I do. I don't know. I've not been disappointed with him. I think he's been exactly what I expected. He's not playing the role of someone who plays 80 minutes every single week. It's difficult to kind of get into that. And also these international breaks are not helping. He came in, was it against City? He came in the day before City, was it? I can't remember. He came in and basically, before the North London derby, and then he had to watch the low block we did, and then it was international break. He had to train for 2 weeks, and then he came back, and then since then, we've had Carabao Cups and all sorts, and he's had bit parts. We need a flurry of post the next international break. That's when you'll kind of see Sterling, because we'll be playing every 3 days for 3 months. He'll be playing a lot more, and we'll kind of get him in the rust off. And this game looked like he was getting some of that rust off. He was really challenging their fullbacks. So I don't know if we'll send him back. He'll definitely have to go back. But if they're looking to go big on Sesko for 60, 70 million, and that's their plan, Sterling for 15 million from Chelsea, like Jorginho deal at 30 for 2 years, might be a really good idea to go underneath Saka. Because to be honest, whoever you bring in for Saka, we need him to be good enough that they can play Europa Cup, hope not, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, some Champions League games, the last 20 minutes of games to give Saka rests, and the odd game just in the league like this week, that kind of game where you could, you trust him enough that Saka can come off the bench for 20 minutes and give him that extra rest. A 30-year-old Sterling might be the best case, because again, if you brought in, let's say they convert Martinelli into a right midfielder, which they were trying to for a bit, him and Saka are then competing actively. And then on the left, you have Trossard, but then you bring like a Nico Williams, for example. None of those players want to sit on the bench, and therefore you're going to find unhappy players. Not that you want people that are happy to sit on the bench, but you need players like Neto, our keeper, who was asleep during the game. You need players that are world class, but at a different point in their career that they're not needing to play 90 minutes or can play 90 minutes. So, for example, if you played Sterling every 3 days, like they do Saka every 9 minutes, he'll be injured after 2-3 games. He knows that, so therefore he's not sitting there going, why am I not playing every single game? Because he knows his body can't. So a quality player like that can give Saka the rest is probably the smart option. And then Sesko and Havertz as your big number nines, and then Trossard and Mane on the other side. I think that could be a good way of going. But it really depends how the loan deal goes, because by February we might all be like, God, he's so bad. Arteta doesn't trust him, doesn't bring him on, and you just think, it just didn't work out. But it could save you a lot of money because, again, like I said, you're going to have to buy a winger and a forward in the summer. And if one of them's 12 million or 15 million or something, or 20 million even, and they're as world class as Sterling, and they can just sit behind Saka happily, I think it would be a good, smart move. But we'll see. He seems very happy. So we'll see. But there is talk, I think Gunnerblog put one up about Sesko deal. There's certain things that have already been done that are in place to try and get that deal done quicker in the summer. So that is another one. I wonder if Leipzig, if it's not going great this season, whether January they try to do that. Do you ever see exits in January transfer window from Khalid? Tierney, if he's fit, will get a loan in view to a permanent, I hope. I just saw Nuno Tavares is the top goal assister in Serie A for Lazio, which is interesting. He's still our player, believe it or not. I think he'll go. I wonder if everyone gets fit. Like Tomiyasu came on for a little bit. Timber should be fit post-international. Ben White should be fit post-international. If you imagine it all fit, Zinchenko should be fit somewhat after international. I don't know what happened with him. When they're all available, and Kivior as well. Like, for example, he played Partey at left-back just to not play Kivior. That's a slight worry. He obviously likes Kivior, but, I mean, that seemed like a perfect game to play him there or Lewis Skelly or someone. But I wonder, because now Lewis Skelly's even in the fold, Zinchenko and Kivior are right on that fringes of getting into that team because I think he trusts Tomiyasu more than them. He loves Calafiori, he loves Ben White, he loves Timber. I wonder if Tomiyasu and, let's say, Kivior, and then he loans Zinchenko, but I don't know. I really don't know, but there will be some kind of exit, I think, in January, but I think it'll probably be Tierney, simply because our squad is so thin already. And if anything, I think we might do a loan. Victoria Cordia Crescent says, I like Gyökeres. I really do as well. Khaled, fullbacks seem to do well in Syria. I'm glad Tavares is improving. Yeah. And again, I think I saw an interview or a quote from Tierney where he's got no bad blood with Arsenal. He just said, I'm not the fullback they need. Which is exactly it. And I think Tavares is almost another example of that. It's any other year, like when we had Bellerin and all these players, Tavares would be a great fit because he's a rampaging forward from defence. Very similar to Calafiori, but Calafiori has a certain, I would say, smartness to it. But I think what we like about Calafiori is the fact that it's a bit like roller coastery. Like, he drives forward, he drives back, he gets beaten, but then he has to get back in. He has to do something. He's a bit of a wild card, to be honest. He's not Timber and Ben White, who are very steady. So maybe Tavares does fit. I don't know. But no, I think as far as January, I think Tierney will go out. I don't think many others will. We might even bring someone in, like the Trossard thing. Maybe even the Sterling deal gets done in January, where they say, can we make this into a permanent or something to get ahead of the following year, depending if there's room on the financial fair play on this year. Maybe get that deal done now, and therefore it's before June, which means post-June you can then go spend big money on Sesko and, let's say, another midfielder. Because we're going to need midfielders next year, because Odegaard, Moreno, Rice, Partey, Jorginho's gone next year. Partey might be staying, but it's still a very small amount of players that you need to bring in another midfielder. So maybe there's some kind of movement like that, but I'm not sure. I wish it was Bellerin's time now. Back then, he would have suited us now. Yeah, I think so, because he started to invert actually at the end, which was really interesting, which is not like him. Other things that happened at Southampton game, I really like Dibbling. I really think he's someone that, if Southampton go down this year, I would love us to invest not a lot of money, but money now, because I think he's definitely the next like Grealish or that type. I wonder if he is someone that we will look at. The other things were Calafiori did get beat a lot, but like I just said, I do like the randomness of him. Havertz's finish was very Van Persie-like. Really like that goal. Saka was unbelievable, by the way. That guy, he got a goal and 2 assists. I think this season, in the 7 Premier League games, he's got an assist in every single one, which is bizarre. I think he's got 8 assists and 2 goals in 7 games or something, which is 9 goals and assists in a game in the season. Which again, some people say he needs more goals, yeah, but I mean, look at our fixture list. We were against City, Villa away, Tottenham away. Like, the fact he got assists in all these games is something. So it's just a difficult fixture list. I think in the next 10 games he'll definitely score 4 or 5. Could he beat Henry's assist record, which I think is 17? He's already on 7. So and Havertz has scored in, is it 7 consecutive home games, and he really likes the home crowd. Havertz is pulled out of the international break. Said it's a knee injury. He finished the game fine. I don't know if this is Arsenal finally being a little savvy. I hope it's not more, because post-international having him or Odegaard out would just be horrific. So hopefully it's not that. But he's not going. There's a couple others that aren't. Timber's not going. So at least in this international break, training is going to have, again, Havertz injured, supposedly, but, Havertz is there. Ben White is there. Timber is there. There's a decent amount of players still there. Jorginho, I think, is staying. Moreno, I think, is staying. It's a nice, similar to that last international break. We had a good amount still there with like Ben White and Sterling used that as his time to kind of bed in. I wonder if this international break could be actually quite good for a lot of Arsenal, as long as, touch wood, we don't keep getting injuries on these international breaks. Dark Lord said Arsenal playing dark arts. Yeah, we're implementing those dark arts. I'm very excited about. I was watching, what was it? Oh, it was the Birmingham Arsenal Carabao Cup final. I saw the kind of last goal. Is it Martin's goal? The mistake between, it was Szczesny and Koscielny, I think. After Birmingham scored, there was no heat to this game, by the way. There was Koscielny's on his knees, like upset because he's just conceded a 90th minute mistake in a final, and 2 of their players come over and just pie face him, and he doesn't react or anything. They proper pie face him to the ground, and I was like, can you imagine that now in the Premier League? Like, that would be mad. If someone did that, there'd be like bans and all sorts, and Twitter would go mad. But no, it's just a different time. We just got on with it. Interesting. So there's an international break coming up. I don't really want to talk about it. Next week we will talk about, hopefully, no injuries, and we'll get back to Prediction League, and we'll be talking about the upcoming Premier League set of fixtures. And again, once they're back, we got Champions League back. We got, I think there's a Carabao Cup game. All that for the next 3 or 4 weeks until the November international break, believe it or not. But yeah, so next week episode Joe will be back. We'll be talking Premier League, all sorts of that. But for this weekend, hey, England are on, or whoever you support, whatever country you're from. Just don't watch it. Just go out and do stuff. Enjoy yourself. And we'll see you back next week. And like I said earlier, Gunners Are Us every single Wednesday, 10 a.m. GMT on TikTok, and the podcast goes up by midday every single Wednesday on iTunes and Spotify. Please give it a download. Give it a 5-star review. If you're downloading these podcasts, go to the bottom, scroll to the bottom of the page. There's a 5-star, kick it 5-star, do a little review, even if it just says, come on you gooners or something. It all helps our algorithms. So we will see you next week at the podcast. Gunners Are Us next Wednesday. Goodbye.